nice introduction. It's really great to be here. As she said, I graduated in 2003, and I think I've been here maybe once or twice since graduation, so it's been a while. It looks really different. When I left, actually, this building, the ground hadn't broken on this building, so this is incredible to be here and see. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my path that I've taken in my career thus far, in my young career, which I call a somewhat unique path in physics, or how to have a career in playing with lasers, which is what I do basically in my profession. And it's unique in the sense, not that there are a few people that do it, but more so that it's a path that not a lot of people know about in the US that is a career that is possible to go into if you study physics throughout school. Most people think you become a professor if you study physics, and there are a lot of opportunities outside of that field that you can take. So just a little bit about me. Hannah pretty much covered this, but I thought it was worth pointing out that I only go to schools that have the colors blue and gold. I was the first class of girls at Shady Side, actually, when it became co-ed in 1998. I stayed through for high school, went to Michigan, where I kind of got to take a unique opportunity in the sense that I got an engineering degree, but I was studying physics. So I knew I was interested in astrophysics. That was always kind of my passion. So I got an engineering degree in that. I liked it so much I stayed for my doctorate. And that was in high energy density physics, which is really what the rest of my slides will talk a little bit about, what high energy density physics is and what I do in my career. But San Diego was beautiful. I left Michigan, which was really cold, moved to San Diego, it was great. Eventually became a staff scientist at General Atomics, which if you Google, General Atomics is mostly known for designing and creating the drones for the military. So that's not what I do at all, but it is like General Atomics' claim to fame, so I just stuck up a predator picture. So what is high energy density physics? It's really a regime of physics where you can think about the density of energy being high. So if you think about energy units, something like a joule, a density unit, a per unit volume unit, those two things together actually make pressure. That's the unit of pressure. So while those kind of joules per meter cube isn't a typical unit that you think about, we often refer to pressure units in bars or atmospheres. So high energy density physics specifically is a regime of physics where you are studying systems that are above 1 million atmospheres of pressure, which is the equivalent of 1 megabar. So this cartoon down here, it's just meant to kind of illustrate maybe something that you guys can connect to. That here at sea level, we experience 1 atmosphere of pressure simply from the atmosphere above us. If you've ever gone swimming or gone diving, going 10 meters down, about 33 feet, you can double the pressure just because of the weight of the water above you. So to get into a high energy density regime, you'd have to go down to 5 million meters just to even get to the threshold of what HED physics is. So it's pretty deep. So HED physics we also call kind of the foundation of inertial fusion and experimental astrophysics. That's actually the subtitle on the textbook, which my thesis advisor wrote, actually, on the subject. But inertial fusion and experimental astrophysics are kind of the 2 branches of HED physics that most researchers study. So fusion is a reaction where you take 2 hydrogens, or isotopes of hydrogen on the left, that if they undergo a fusion reaction, you can produce a heavier element, helium. And as a byproduct, you get, because of conservation, you get actually a big output of energy. So fusion is what's happening all the time at the center of our sun, center of all stars. It's kind of like the engine of the star. It's all these fusion reactions that keep it burning. And On the experimental astrophysics side, it's kind of a plot of density and temperature that show you the one bar that goes across. It says 1 megabar. That's the threshold for HED physics. So everything to the top and right of that are things that we can study in the lab, as in kind of experimental astrophysics. So we can look at the interior of planets. We can reproduce conditions at the center of the sun in the laboratory. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, what looks like a piece of candy, actually, the inertial fusion. That's kind of one of the primary objectives of the lab I currently work at. But just below, kind of some examples of comparison. The experiments that we do every day in the lab, they're scaled. Of course, we can't produce the actual sun here. So we make it really small. The sun is, 10 to the 6 kilometers in diameter, but we can produce something really similar that's about 1/10 of a millimeter, similar conditions. And on the lab astro side, people who are interested in observational astronomy, the data that you collect is from telescopes, and you can create these pictures and try and infer things from them. But the time scales to get that data are so much longer and less informative than if you could reproduce that in the lab. And so experimental scientists have come up with ways to do just that, scale down little parts of astrophysical systems and create them in the lab. And so I did that for my PhD. I was an experimental astrophysicist for my thesis project. So how do we do that? How do we create HED conditions? Well, we do that with lasers. I'm guessing most of you have played with a laser pointer before, and that's probably what most people think of when I say lasers. The lasers that we play with in our profession are about the size of 3 football fields. So the picture on the right there, that's a big laser facility. It's the biggest in the world, actually. So laser pointer has about 5 milliwatts of power. The largest laser in the world has about 15 orders of magnitude more power in it, so about 420 terawatts. You can take the energy from this laser light and shoot it to a small target, something that's on the millimeter scale, to raise its temperature and density so high that you can study those things like the interior of planets or the sun. And so just kind of for reference, I thought probably most people know what a millimeter looks like, but a penny is about 20 millimeters in diameter, so we focus laser light from a 3 football field size laser facility onto a 20th of a penny. So it's pretty crazy. So one of the biggest missions why these laser facilities have been built is the U.S. is really trying to demonstrate that we can use lasers to create fusion in the laboratory. So that one on the right is the one you saw on the last slide. That's where I work currently. The one on the left, the Omega Laser Facility, is in Rochester, New York. It's the second largest laser in the world. That's where I did my thesis work. But both of these labs have the goal of contributing to fusion science work. And so they are big laser facilities that really, kind of the way we talk about it is, every time we shoot an experiment, shoot the laser and do an experiment, we're really trying to figure out, can we build a miniature sun on the Earth? I mean, that's it. If we were to demonstrate a fusion reaction, that's really what we're doing. And so ultimately, long-term goal, among a few others, is to provide, a source of energy in the future where we're not burning fossil fuels. But honestly, in the meantime, in doing research and doing a lot of work, we're just learning a lot about fundamental physics by using these lasers. So I'll be brief here, but there are kind of 2 concepts in fusion research currently. One's called direct drive and one's called indirect drive. They both involve lasers. The first, the laser hits what we call fuel or target directly, where in the indirect drive, the lasers go into what kind of looks like a can. It's called a hole rod. And it basically acts as an oven, so it heats up and then it heats the fuel. And so whether or not it's the laser or the secondary radiation, in both scenarios, what we call the capsule, the fuel, has to compress and basically shock down and become much more dense in the process of in the experimental lifetime. And so it does that with kind of rocket-like reactions where how rockets use fuel and thrust coming out. The lasers actually help do that in this compression phase of a fusion reaction. So the capsule that needs to be compressed, it actually has to reduce 35 times in radius, or about 40,000 times in volume. So you can think about that as a basketball becoming a pea in about a microsecond, and it has to be perfectly symmetric for this to work. So we haven't done it yet. We have made a lot of progress over the last few decades. But this is routine work that's going on at the lab that I work at. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a video. It's short, but you'll see the lab, you'll see the laser facility, and it'll take you through this concept of fusion in the lab.
Here at the National Emission Facility, we use the largest, most energetic laser system in the world to generate miniature stars in the laboratory as part of our work ensuring the safety, security, and reliability of our nation's nuclear stockpile. The technique we're using is called inertial confinement fusion, or ICF. The idea is we take a laser light that's amplified in this enormous building the size of 3 football fields side by side and 10 stories tall, and focus all that laser light down on this tiny target, a capsule sitting inside a hole room or small cavity. It's an incredibly difficult challenge because the scales at every single step are mind-blowing. Let's take a closer look now at how ICF all comes together.
After traveling nearly a mile inside the myth while they get amplified up in energy, all 192 laser beams enter the whole room through 2 holes at the top and bottom and are precisely aligned to hit a particular spot on the inside wall of this little cavity.
That's like standing on the mound at AT&T Park in San Francisco and throwing a strike at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, some 350 miles away.
The laser beams then rapidly heat the inside surface of the hole round, generating an oven of energetic X-rays that is 6 million degrees Fahrenheit in temperature.
That'll be like bringing the sun close to where the moon is. That's one heck of a suntan!
Those energetic X-rays then start ablating the fuel capsule surface, compressing it at velocities of over 300 kilometers per second.
That's like riding from San Francisco to New York in 16 seconds!
During the final stage of the implosion, the fuel core reaches pressures of over 300 billion atmospheres and temperatures of 200 million degrees Fahrenheit.
200 million degrees Fahrenheit is 7 times hotter than the center of the sun.
Under these conditions, nuclei of hydrogen atoms fuse together and create a microscopic star lasting 100 trillionths of a second.
A blink of an eye takes 3 billion times longer than that. But for that tiny fraction of a second, we've created the hottest place in the world.
When the hydrogen nuclei fuse, a tiny amount of mass is converted into a huge amount of energy, according to Einstein's mass-energy relation, E equals mc squared.
So if this 1 gram cube of sugar were our fusion fuel, it would actually produce as much energy as burning 100 barrels of oil.
Together, the team here at Lawrence Livermore National Lab is working hard on its missions to demonstrate fusion ignition, ensure the nation's safety, and do groundbreaking discovery science, all at the same time.
cheesy. I like to think that most of us aren't like the Big Bang Theory characters, but that doesn't really do much to help us. But it kind of gives you an idea of the scales. It's incredible. I mean, like I said, most people don't know this happens on Earth every day, that we're doing this kind of research and producing astrophysical conditions right here in the lab. So we occasionally also use our laser facility as a movie set. I just wanted to point this out because we think it's kind of cool. That NIF is a really impressive building. The laser is extremely impressive. But just the hardware is so cool that Star Trek actually filmed many sets of their, or many scenes of their movie here as their engine room. I think that's what it was. So these are actually the laser beams coming in. These ports that kind of stick out. So that's what you're seeing. So this is my second to last slide, but this I just figured I'd put in because this is specifically what I'm working on right now. So it's a question that always comes up and things we're striving to do is improve what instruments we have to look at to diagnose and understand what happens in these experiments. And that's a challenge all by itself. And so over the last 2 years, I've helped lead a project to develop something called the crystal backlighter imager. That's really just a high resolution and a high speed x-ray camera. So just kind of how you get x-rays at the hospital. We take x-rays of the fusion experiments, so up there. During the commissioning phase of our instrument, we just did some tests to see how good our resolution was or how fast we could take a picture. So we took a picture of a gold grid, you kind of see here sitting on a penny, just for comparison's sake. A human hair is about 100 microns in diameter. The thinnest wire here on one of these is about 1/10 of that, and this is an actual image we took with our camera in about 100 picosecond exposure, which is 10 to the minus, 1 picosecond is 10 to the minus 12 seconds, so it's really, really fast. And how you can see the grid is pretty sharp, so it's actually, we can see resolution down to about 5 microns, which is 10 to the minus 6 meters. So it's very impressive, actually. This is a huge feat in technology, and this is one of the projects that I led, and we kind of just started to wrap up at the lab, so it's really cool. So you saw this already, but I wanted to put it back up because I wanted to at least say a few comments about how I actually got here, how I actually got to this stage of my career. And the first thing I think, to me, it's obvious, is that I have great parents, and I'm not saying that just because they're both in this room right now, but they gave me a great opportunity to go to Shady Side and to start my education here, and I know that's definitely helped me along my career and prepared me for everything that I've done thus far. So while I was at Shady Side, I did take advanced math. I was always kind of interested in math and science. I did take advanced math, I took advanced physics, and that really prepared me. I saw things that most college freshmen hadn't seen before. So it really kind of gave me a head start at Michigan and prepared me for what courses I would take my freshman and sophomore year even. But also, in addition to math and science, which seemed kind of obvious with a career in physics, is I took the English, and well, we all take English here, I guess, but I also chose to take creative writing. And the writing skills that I learned at Shady Side have just definitely been a difference maker in my career. Writing, even though creative writing is quite different than technical writing, it's such an important skill that it really will help further your career if you're a good writer, even in science. And so I think that's something most people don't know, but it's very true. And then at Michigan, I was fortunate enough that Michigan's obviously a really big university. It has a lot of research going on. And I took the opportunity to do it in undergrad. Most people think, oh, you're undergrad, you're going to classes, you're doing a lot of homework. That's true. But if you can seek out research opportunities, they're professors that have labs that do really cool stuff that you will maybe never be exposed to, but when you're at college, you have the opportunity to talk to these professors, ask what they're doing, ask what sustains their lab, and get involved. And, you know, in the lab that I worked in as an undergrad, it's actually the one I stayed and got my PhD in. He hired, 20 undergrads a year just who could commit a couple hours a week just to do something, just to see what research was all about and a career in research. And even just graduate school, kind of gives you an into graduate school. So the last thing is, once I did my postdoc at UCSD, aside from just changing to a nicer weather, going to San Diego, I just got an opportunity to network, see a little bit more of a mentorship role. I was no longer a graduate student, I was helping graduate students, and that kind of really propelled me as a stepping stone to my current position as a staff scientist. So I'll just leave you with the picture. That's actually our high-speed, high-resolution camera there on the desk in front of us, and that's a few members of the team that have helped me along the way.